Well, welcome back. You are now watching video 16 and the continuation of this video presentation titled Ignorance of White and Black Supremacy Exposed, which is part of my series of video presentations called The Redemption from the Curse of the Black Spell. And again, I just want to thank you for being with me thus far into this presentation. I think this is the last video for this presentation from this topic. Now, if you did not watch the previous videos, video 1 to 6 to 15, in that order, I ask that you please do so before just watching the end on this last video. And by so doing, even though it may take you some time, even if it takes you 16 days, a month, to watch them at your convenience, I'm sure you'll get a better understanding of this presentation, and you'll be able to take what makes sense for you. If everything doesn't make sense, you take what makes sense, or you interpret it properly. That's my objective anyhow. So again, thanks for being with me this far. Now, there are those leaders in our various communities, many of whom are the systems trained, elected, and educated scholars, educators, and doctors, etc. And many others that are self-proclaimed leaders that have identified and are calling images and paintings of the man that is commonly known today as Jesus Christ. They're calling those images white, or white-skinned, blue-eyed Jesus. And also some paintings and images of the supposedly Jesus's father and God, also known to many as their heavenly Father, along with his angels, prophets, and servants, etc. Saints, whites are white. Many of these leaders and revolutionaries have claimed and are claiming that these alleged white paintings and images that are to be found in the homes, schools, churches, books, and minds of our African people, or many of our African people, are the primary reason for the inculcation and the brainwashing of the system's white supremacy, the inculcation of inferiority complexes, and consequently the stunt growth of intellectual maturity and paralysis, among many other things that most, if not all, of our people are to some degree the victims. And they are suggesting that our people of African descent should remove and destroy these, what they call white images and paintings, or that they repaint them black, or replace them with images and paintings that are black. And that by so doing, our people, and particularly our children's self-esteem and self-confidence, will be greatly and noticeably enhanced because they will now, or they would now begin to see their God, their Savior, the angels, the great spiritual leaders and prophets here and heroes, looking black, just like them, just like the children are black. Now, though there is an abundance of truth to this claim, there are also some great and serious errors and Satan's deceptions as well. To quote a very good friend of mine that once said, and I quote, "Error is like a parasitic plant. It thrives on truth," unquote. And from my perspective, the evidence of these errors and Satan's deceptions can be heard and also can be felt in the oftentimes venomous passions that are radiating or resonating from the mouths, the hearts, the minds, the thoughts, the speeches, the lectures, and the voices of some of these self-proclaimed black leaders, black power, and black revolutionaries. The hatred, the resentment, the bitter scorn, the prayer and hope for revenge, the fire burn them, the calling down of fire and brimstone, the prayer for revenge of the spirits of our African ancestors, and vengeance of the gods of our African ancestors upon not just a few, but upon the entire Caucasian race, or the entire European Caucasian race. These venomous passions of hatred that are resonating from the lips of some, if not all, of these self-proclaimed black leaders, black power and black revolutionaries, black activists, and other individuals as well, towards the entire Caucasian race, is a trick of the devil. It is self-defeating. It is self-destructive. It is a self-destructive con of Satan upon them. And they don't even know it. And they can't even begin to recognize it. And some might even get pissed at me, and not that I care, for addressing it. It is a trick, or it's a trick, a Satan's con, to have us all lose sight of him, the alien invader, Satan the devil. Lose sight of our real and formidable enemy, along with his chosen group of people, the elites, that he, Satan, has selected and elected from every race, and made them into his own image and likeness, and are working through them to deceive and rule the world in ignorance. Let me quickly explain how and why it is self-defeating and self-destructive, not only to themselves, but also to all those who listen and follow them and are practicing their teachings. First, they must realize the fact that these venomous passions of hatred and resentment that are coming from their lips and are directed towards the entire Caucasian race are likened unto fire. Second, they must realize that unless they are magicians or illusionists, they cannot take real fire into their bosoms, and they and their clothes are not burnt. Third, they must realize that though it may seem, or even though it may be logically justified to be feeling and expressing those emotions of bitter hatred and resentment, etc., as a result of our past and current experiences in the slavery economic system, but venomous passions of hatred and resentment, etc., are not natural. We must know that venomous passions of hatred and resentment, among other such destructive vibrations and thoughts, are not natural. They may be normal, but the fact is that they are not natural. There's a difference between that which is normal and that which is natural. And if we are the natural native earthly humans, we must adhere to the principles of naturality, of nature. In other words, they are alien and quite unnatural, and they are repulsive to our physical bodies and mind. us, the natural native earthly humans. And regardless of to whom they might be directed, they will do far more evil to the possessor and the transmitter than they will ever do to the intended receiver or receivers, because they are destructive vibrations. They cause the mind of the possessor to become clouded, or rather to become clouded. They cause the mind to become impaired and corrupted. Consequently, or as a result, the mind, is completely unable to attract, completely unable to entertain, and above all to decode spiritually encrypted information, or to make sound and wise judgment. In other words, I think that it is difficult, if not impossible, for these leaders to be entertaining in their minds and again be constantly spewing out of their minds so much hate for others, and not expect to become victims of that which they are sowing. It is bound to affect their spiritual health, also known as mental disease, and consequently their physical health, also known as illness or physical diseases. So we must be very careful of what we are feeding, teaching, and telling our children, because they will live that which they learn from us. For example, the fact is that most, if not all, of the paintings and images that those leaders are calling white, are not at all white. But most of those images and paintings are true to form the expressed images and paintings of the people who drew them and painted them, who are of course the pale skin, or if you prefer, the melanin deficient European Caucasians. For example, the famous and original painting of Jesus by Michelangelo is not at all white. The painting of what is called the Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci is not at all white. The paintings of the Virgin Mary and some of the Madonna of Humility are not at all white, with the exception of when they are painted, repainted, photographed, or filmed in black and white. One cannot sensibly, intelligently, and honestly say that they are white. From my perspective, to be doing so is an expression of Satan's deception, or it is the manifestation of our grossest ignorance and intellectual retardation that is having us proving to the world that we are so dumb that that we are so dumb that we are unable to make the physical and visible distinction between black and white, or between night and day. By doing so, we are unconsciously insulting our own latent intelligence and also confusing our brain. Secondly, the statues and images of Jesus and other Christian saints and biblical characters such as David by Michelangelo may sometimes appear white and with Caucasian features, but our intelligence coupled with common sense should tell us that it is not because these biblical characters' skin complexion were white, and not necessarily because their physical features were Caucasian features, but it is because of the white stone, the white marble stone, or maybe white material out of which they are sculpted, and those who carved them gave them their own European features. and to knowingly tell your children or tell our children that those statues, paintings, and images are white, as in the case of the so-called white doll or black doll experiment, is not only misleading our children, but is also confusing them. People, let us use common sense. Let us swallow our pride and admit that most of these pictures and images, these dolls that are called white, let us admit that they are not at all white. They are pale skin, blue eyes Jesus with Caucasian features, or pale skin, blue eyed dolls with Caucasian features. Third, we should be intelligent enough. We should be matured enough. We should be open-minded enough, tolerant enough to accept truth, to embrace truth, and to be corrected by truth. And from my perspective, if this man now called Jesus Christ did at all exist, and if we truly think and believe that he was and is truly a good role model for us all, the natural native earthly humans, if we think that, then none of us today know exactly what he looked like. But we can only assume, or we may only assume. Therefore, we can all, and we are all entitled to make our own assumption and our own depiction of him in our own race, because he supposedly represents us all, or that is what we have been taught. Jesus is supposed to represent us. That is what we have been taught. And if he's truly a good man, then we should make any depiction of him we wish. And if he was and is truly a good man, as many are today claiming he was, and that he is an example for all our natural native earthly humans to follow, then we should all be able to see and recognize his goodness and his greatness in any depiction of him, in any culture, in any tradition, religion, or race of people. Therefore, if or when we see or hear of an image, painting, or statue, etc., that is called Jesus Christ, or to be more correct, Yahushua, and one that was genuinely done to represent him, then we should not be seeing or thinking of him, or thinking of it as a black man, a white man, or any color man or race. But we should be seeing and thinking of his nature, his qualities, his exemplary characteristics. For common sense alone should tell us that the image is not him. And anyone that would think otherwise seriously needs help with their mental disease. And we should also teach our children to do likewise. Teach them first to look for the good in everything that they see. Teach them to highlight, to maximize and duplicate the good and great qualities in everything and everyone, and to either ignore, suppress, diminish, reject, etc., all the ignoble, destructive, unproductive, evil, and satanic qualities and characteristics in everything and everyone. For as the old saying goes, there is good in the worst of us and bad in the best of us, the natural native earthly humans. But first, we can't give what we don't have ourselves. We can't teach that which we haven't yet learned ourselves. So we must first, as adults, learn these lessons. Therefore, if the native Indian depicts him as being a native Indian, Asian people depicts him as being Asian, the Caucasian and being European, and the African depicts him as being African, etc. Then we shouldn't have a problem with that, or with what they honestly think he looks like to them. So I will suggest that if this man called Jesus, more correctly Yahushua, did exist, and that he was what most people think or believe he was, and possible, as some claim still is, then we should stop trying to diminish or destroy the Caucasian depiction of him as being European or any other race of people depiction of him. And let us therefore emulate his character. If we, in our own knowledge, understanding, and wise judgment, find him worthy, or this character worthy for us to do so. Who we are is not our physical bodies, nor is it our skin complexion. And as I have just said, that as natural native earthly humans, we must recognize and admit that there is good in the worst of us and bad in the best of us humans. For according to one writer, if we say that we have no sin, we deceive ourselves and the truth is not in us. In other words, if we say that we have not erred, if we are proclaiming and professing that we are pure, that we are perfect, etc., then not only are we deceiving ourselves, but we are totally disconnected from truth, which means that we are of the devil. As customary, in closing, allow me to again borrow and paraphrase Bob Marley, who was echoing His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie, late Emperor of Ethiopia. And I quote on a paraphrase, "For until the color of a person's skin complexion is of no more significance than the color of his or her eyes, there will be no peace among the natural native earthly humanity, among our natural native earthly humanity." So I do hope that in this presentation I have exposed the erroneous and deceptive devil's ideologies called white supremacy and black supremacy, white power and black power, or that at the very least I may have given you something more to think about. So please stay tuned for my other video presentation in the series Redemption from the Curse of the Black Spell. I am the Mystic Philosopher. And thank you again for watching. You are tuned to the right number.